How's it going, everyone? It's me, Vivi, and welcome to another Ratchet Clank discussion video. I really need to come up with a new intro sentence. Anywho, the point of this video is, let's talk about the future of Ratchet Clank, what to expect and when to expect a new game. Realistically, let's go with that. Like I always say, a video like this, I do tend to repeat myself, I have to admit. You know, like, dude, stop rehashing, we know what you're about to say, we've heard it 100 times before, I know, but you have to admit, it's quite helpful and, you know, for new people who find my channel. For those of you who've been subscribed for a while, I understand, you've heard this information before. Now let's talk about E3 2018. It is approaching. Sony, it looks like they will have a closing at E3, and what I mean by this is, they will have their conference last. This could mean anything, really. Scheduling just worked out that way, or Sony really wants to end it with a big bang. Does this mean we will have a new Ratchet & Clank reveal? No, at least not until, well, you know what, not at this E3. But there will be more Ratchet & Clank, no doubt about that. Remember, the sales of the PS4 game, don't forget, it's all business. Do not expect a new Ratchet & Clank trailer at this year's E3. It is simply too early. Currently, the team is focused on a pretty big project, Insomniac Games. It seems like, from watching their live streams, both their studios in North Carolina and California are publicly busy with Marvel's Spider-Man PS4. That game is currently getting a lot of hype. Insomniac Games will of course jump right into that crowd, and have heavy focus on that. Marvel and Sony, they approached Insomniac Games, they chose that studio. It's a pretty big deal. Spider-Man had a coverage in May by Game Informer, we're talking about 14 exclusive pages. It doesn't stop Sony from showing another trailer at E3 of course. If I'm correct, I might be mistaken, never in 14 years has Ratchet & Clank ever been covered like that. Sure, we had trailers, interviews, sure, but not a novel, like more than 10 pages talking about the game, right? Sure, back then Insomniac Games released a new Ratchet & Clank game pretty much consecutively. Sure, Insomniac Games worked on Ratchet & Clank, All for One and Resistance 3 at the same time back in 2009, 2010. They can tackle two projects, no problem with that, but this is Marvel. This is a huge new opportunity for them. It looks like their upcoming game is really big, heavy, narrative-driven story. Wouldn't you at least expect both teams to mainly focus on Spider-Man right now? I mean, it's Marvel. I do not expect anything Ratchet & Clank until the release of Spider-Man, which is on September 7th, 2018. Don't forget, by the way. Ratchet & Clank's 15th anniversary art book will get released on July 24th. An art book by Dark Horse. Yes, it got delayed twice, from February to July. Well, no. We went from February, then to March, and then to July. And I am pretty salty, to be honest. Why did this happen? It's just something that has to do with publication, from what I've heard. The book was actually done in November 2017. Insomniac Games posted a picture on Twitter. This is what the book looks like. It does look sweet. Why are they using the picture from Tools of Destruction? Well, simple. It's a pretty memorable picture. Now, the topic of the music composer, I'll leave it for another video, but I'll mention a few things. David Bergeau. Reading the comments and stuff, usually what I hear is this: I miss him, the new music is not memorable, it's forgettable generic music. I don't dislike the more orchestrated type of music since a crack in time, but I do have a greater place in my heart for Bergeau's work. But I'll dive deeper into this into another video. The main idea right now is Insomniac Games, when people bring up Bergeau in their live streams, James Stevenson always replies by, hey, you never know, we currently don't have plans for the next Ratchet & Clank game. So with that, guys, the composer is on good terms, so don't worry. Insomniac Games, by the way, has no idea what to do next, either post Into the Nexus or post Reimagining. They have two fandoms to deal with right now. Which would be the wisest move? Two things I can think of currently. Post ITN, maybe the story of the Lombaxes, as I've said 100 times. And number two, we don't have a movie sequel, right? Lombaxes are Lombaxes. I think they were thinking about it. Shh, don't tell anyone. It's easy, accessible material. As for not having a movie sequel, why did I bring this up? The second game after the reimagining, let's say that's a thing right now. they will of course have a lot more creative freedom, more planets, more original weapons. All the complaints you had for the reimagining, they'll fix those. I'm not saying all of them, but you know, at least for the planets and more original weapons. The PS4 game had a deadline, a product of the movie. A few people were left to polish that game. The rest moved on to VR. That game was produced in 10 months. So I'm expecting their next game to be completely full-fledged, and I want them to spend at least a year and a half. They did spend a year and a half for A Crack in Time, so I'm sure they can for their next one. But going commando, assuming they will reimagine that one, some people want it, okay, it's fine, but in my opinion, it's unnecessary. The game is great as it is. Why does it need a remake? Sure, it's a great game, but should they retouch it? Okay, so what if they remake Going Commando and Up Your Arsenal? What then? I just don't expect them to suddenly resume the Future Saga, because if they remake 2 and 3, that new audience will get too used to those remakes, and then them suddenly jumping to the Future Saga, the new game, they'll just get confused. Unless of course Sony is planning a remastered collection of the Future Saga for the PS4. That'd be an absolutely great way of having fans catch up. Or PS2 classics. I'm still wondering why Sony hasn't considered it. Same goes for Sly Cooper, like, are they hiding something? Also, I understand that we do have plenty of Ratchet & Clank games currently. Some people are saying it needs to end. We had enough games. Enough is enough. True, but there's still stuff they could do. A lot of people these days, due to the success of the new God of War, they bring that up when discussing the fate of the future of some series which pretty much remain dead at the moment. Like God of War, the new one, which I highly recommend by the way, great game. The feel is still there, but this time they decided to follow a more cinematic narrative approach. And look how that turned out. Look at the sales. It already sold 3 million copies. Fastest selling PS4 exclusive. So if they ever decide to bring a change to Ratchet & Clank, you know, to make it fresh, but you know, keep the elements, the stuff we're used to, you never know how the game will turn out. Honestly, thinking about change when it comes to Ratchet & Clank, I can't really think of anything right now apart from the story or a few game mechanics. But other than that, what do you think they could change? Anywho, Ratchet & Clank, just like God of War did have its up and downs with its games. Same goes with Ratchet & Clank, All for One and Full Frontal Assault. Stevenson himself acknowledged it that fans had pretty much mixed feelings about All for One and Full Frontal Assault. There's always going to be ups and downs unless you're completely perfect, but that is not always the case. Sure, Insomniac Games got a bit rusty, I have to admit, compared to the Future Saga at least. Yes, they have it in them. They just need the right amount of time. Do not spend 10 months, don't spend a year, at least spend a year and a half, or even 2 years. Unless Sony is being a jerk and giving them a very strict deadline, which I hope they don't. Sony, by the way, loves Ratchet & Clank. The mere fact they told Insomniac Games to bring back Nefarious for A Crack in Time. They're paying close attention to the series. Well, at least I hope they are. But anywho, I've said enough for this video, so as usual, do your stuff. If you have any comments, suggestions, questions, or anything like that, leave them all in the comment section below. And as always, I've been Vivi, and thank you so much for watching.